Good evening, everybody. I really want to express my most sincere gratitude to Cork Chamber for this most prestigious award. I'm actually blown away, and it's a very, very deep honour. Now, I was in a little bit of a quandary as to what to talk about. So as one does these days, I went on to ChatGPT and I said, write me an acceptance speech. Kerryman President presents Tipperary Man with Cork Chamber Business Award at its Dublin dinner. Result: your speech will be about a new game combining hurling and football, followed by total and absolute hallucination. But seriously, many of you may wonder why a young engineer came to Cork in the late 70s when Cork's manufacturing industries were closing one after another and the city was in serious decline. When I came back from America, I joined the then fledgling Project Management Limited, now PM Group, at the same time as Joe Toohey, a fellow Tipperary man who's a guest of ours at our family table. PM Group was founded by two Irish engineers, Jim Walsh and Brian Carney, who both sadly passed away earlier this year in the 50th anniversary of the founding of PM Group. And I feel this award is also a tribute to their legacy. Now, I had a few other job offers at the time, but my wife Terry recognised there was something special about these two guys, and she encouraged me to join them. So actually, Terry, it's all your fault. Jim was from Limerick and was an amazing intellect, coming first in Ireland in his Leaving Cert. Brian was from Dublin, but his heart was in Cork. From his father's connections with Drogheda and Crossbarry, and the significance of that will be recognised by many. They wanted to be different. They didn't just want to do good engineering, they wanted to do good project management. Hence the name of this new company, Project Management Limited. They were very delivery focused and they wanted to stay independent, and these became part of the values of PM from day one. Deliver it and stay independent, and those values are as strong today as they ever were. Now, no big company starts as a big company. When Joe and I joined Jim and Brian to work on the Kinsale Head gas field, we practically doubled the size of the company overnight. Never again did it go such an amazing growth phase as that day Joe and I joined the company. For a few years, we worked on the installation of the two Kinsale Head platforms A and B off the coast of Cork. And at that time, new oil and gas fields were being discovered weekly in the North Sea. And we all thought Cork was going to be the next Aberdeen or Stavanger. But I'm afraid it wasn't to be. We finished A and B and there was no C, D, E. So we said, what do we do now? And we contacted Brian Carney. He had a very, very simple but very effective strategy. He said, well, Joe and Pat, we've nothing for you back here in Dublin, so you'd better sort out something for yourselves down in Cork. And you know, sometimes the burning platform gives you great focus. The only thing we knew about was process vessels and pumps and pipes and automation and all this kind of stuff. But we knew how to manage very complex projects in a very hazardous working environment. We knew about budgets, we knew about resources, contracts, deadlines, and managing change. And as Joe Toohey used to say, it's easy to build the facility. The hard part is building the budget. And that statement stayed with me forever. We said to ourselves, do you know what, there's some companies down below in Ringaskiddy, and they're investing a lot of money in pumps and pipes and vessels, so maybe we'll go down and we'll try them. No other Irish companies at the time were servicing the new embryonic pharma industry, only foreign engineering companies. And luckily, we won a series of projects in this new industry, and I suppose today that would be called a pivot. And so began PM's lifetime relationship with the international biopharmaceutical industry. We set up our first Cork office literally in a shed with no windows or ventilation in the back of a trucker's yard down in Monaghan's Road. So what was it like in the early 80s setting up a business in Cork, and why did we succeed? Well, first of all, it was a major advantage not being from Cork and not being from Dublin. Coming from Tipperary, Joe and I didn't know the Cork rules of business. At the time, it was quite ungentlemanly to do cold calls. You weren't supposed to submit tenders based on price. And it was deemed quite unethical to engage with competitors' clients and supplant them. A new vocabulary for us, which we choose to ignore. Today, of course, this is called business development. Then the Dublin engineering firms, they failed miserably to gain a foothold in Cork at that time because they always appointed Monday to Friday managers. And there was only a few trains between Cork and Dublin at the time, and the cute Cork lads would ask them, "And what train are you getting back, boy?" And of course, the emphasis on the boy meant everything. You know, you guys don't live down here. It was the same way Tipperary people say, "Well." But the difference with us was 2 of the 4 directors Joe and myself lived in Cork. So we grew through the 80s and the 90s on back of the major expansion in the pharmaceutical industry. But we had one serious problem. We had a major problem in getting Cork employees to go overseas. This was a real challenge because they interpreted overseas as crossing the River Lee. Employees north of the city didn't want to travel to Ringaskiddy, and employees south of Cork City didn't want to travel to Little Island. So how times have changed. Very early after I became CEO in 2000, I saw just how essential it was for us to be working internationally, not only for PM's growth, but actually for PM's very survival. It was very simple. International pharma, the international pharma industry wanted international partners wherever they were setting up facilities. We had to have a presence wherever the industry was establishing their new facilities. And I guess that started a 10-year-long personal mission of mine to move PM Group from a small Indigenous Irish company to a real serious international player. I used to say to the utter amazement of our Cork employees, "We will lose projects down in Ringaskiddy if we're not Singapore." They used to laugh at me, but eventually they got it. And this focus on international expansion continues today under PM's current CEO, Dave Murphy, and future CEO designate Anthony O'Rourke, both Cork men, graduates of CIT, now MTU. Couldn't be here this evening, but they're very ably represented by a group of my former colleagues in PM Group. Cork is renowned as a global cluster for the pharma manufacturing industry, but what a lot of people don't realise and are unaware of is the scale of Cork's dominance in the engineering and construction of pharma facilities around the world. And it's not just PM, it's dozens of other engineering and contracting companies, too many to mention. Thousands of Cork engineers and process specialists today service the global life sciences industry, many of them chemical and process engineering graduates from MTU and UCC. An anecdotal story. I was in China a few years ago visiting the construction site of a major pharma facility for an international client. There were 5 of us in the room for a very high-level project progress meeting. There were 2 representatives from the client. One was from Cork. The building contractor's representative was from Cork. And if I include myself as from Cork, the 2 of us representing the engineering company were both from Cork. So the one perplexed non-Cork person at the meeting had to endure the first 20 minutes of this very serious project review meeting, listening to a deep analysis by the other 4 attendees of the Munster Senior Hurling final held the previous Sunday. It kind of illustrated to me how Cork people have become the backbone of the global pharma sector. A very far cry from the days when crossing the River Lee was going overseas. If I may switch to two reasons that I feel passionately are behind PM's growth and success, and which I believe I contributed to as strongly as I could. One was very good corporate governance, and two was sharing ownership in the company with our employees. PM had non-executive directors as far back as the late 80s and early 90s. We separated the role of chair and CEO almost 25 years ago. We always had a really high-performing board. The board of PM was chaired by some amazing non-executives down through the years. Don Godson, the late Kevin Kelly, Dan Flinter, and currently Brendan Jennings. In the 90s, we established a revenue-approved scheme to allow employees share in the ownership of the company. And today, something I am so proud of, PM Group is a 100% employee-owned company with 1,300 employee shareholders. I put these two features really at the core of PM's success. PM always had a great sense of purpose to be an Irish engineering company with a difference, but it also had a great sense of service. In other words, giving back. And the Taoiseach Micheál Martin, when he was Minister for Health in 2004, asked me to become the first chair of the new Health Information and Quality Authority, HIQA, which was being headquartered in Cork. And our board immediately approved me taking that role. Now, as you all know, chairing a state board has its challenges. I learned a whole new language, FOIs and PQs, freedom of information and parliamentary questions. But I saw how other state boards were hauled over the coals every week for expensive board dinners in fancy restaurants. So I said, this will not happen on my watch. We held our board dinners in a small Italian family-owned restaurant in North Brunswick Street, near HIQA's Dublin headquarters. We sent around an empty bread basket at the beginning of the meal, and everybody put cash to cover their drinks. HIQA only paid for the pizzas and the spaghetti bolognese, but we had the best board dinners ever, and we never had to worry about FOI. But there's a sequel. A subsequent Minister for Health addressed the HIQA board one evening and accepted our invitation to go for dinner. We said great words to each other, of course, at the meeting, but the only thing the Minister and his Secretary General ever remember about that evening was that they had to put their hands in their pockets when the bread basket came around for a donation to cover their drinks. But they could see HIQA didn't waste money. And for years afterwards, that minister and Sec Gen used to mention that evening to me when I went in looking for funding for HIQA. And you know the lesson is the ripple effect. The right small act can have a massive effect over time. In conclusion, I want to pay tribute to my wife Terry and my family who are here this evening. You know, in business, we all have our ups and our downs. We have our good days and our not so good days. But usually it's only our partners and families that see us when we're down, and they have to put up with us when we're not at our best. So I want to thank Terry and our family for always supporting me through those good and not so good days. But today is a great day. Thank you, Cork Chamber, for honouring me with this amazing award. Míle buíochas, agus go raibh míle maith agaibh go léir.